And now I am very pleased to call on Mrs. Keys Gamara for a recognition of Juneteenth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Whereas the month of June is a time that many in our nation recognize Juneteenth as the holiday that celebrates Emancipation Day, the day in history when the last state ratified the Emancipation Proclamation, and whereas this date marks the time period where African Americans of Texas received notice from President Lincoln that slavery had been abolished, a declaration that was codified in the 13th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. And whereas June 19th also marks the day that African Americans in the southern states exercised independence from those who benefited from their labors in the founding of this nation, and whereas the journey of African Americans represents both great achievements and great hardships, and whereas our nation is currently witnessing the injustices of the African American journey that have existed for far too long, this June 19th celebration weighs heavily on our hearts and our minds in the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd and others who have not been treated equally under the law. And whereas the pain and anguish displayed on our national stage developed from generations of systemic racism that impacts our students, families, staff, and communities, whereas the educational institution of this nation, including FCPS, has a particular responsibility to recognize the painful realities of our history and make sure that our curriculum reflects these realities. And whereas working with the community as one Fairfax, this board is committed to identifying actionable items to improve policies and procedures, to give greater access to opportunities, to ensure that students, families, and staff do not experience inequities in Fairfax County Public Schools. And whereas we value diversity and are united in our opposition to racism and hate, we stand in solidarity with our African American students, educators, staff, and their families. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Fairfax County Public Schools hereby officially commemorates Juneteenth as a day to celebrate and emphasize a collective call to action against injustice of any kind.
I so move.
I so move.
Is there a second to this? Dr. Anderson, second. Ms. Keys Gamara, would you like to speak to your recognition?
I do, and I will ask for your patience ahead of time. I get so passionate about these issues. Indeed, today we do recognize the significance of the date marked Juneteenth for African Americans and for all Americans. And with that, I am going to share a personal story that ties in not only the significance of this announcement back in Texas, which coincidentally came more than 2 years after the actual signing of the Emancipation Proclamation. It was a delay symbolic of what we are experiencing in this nation. So yesterday, my personal story is this. I got a call from my son who is just recently graduated from college, and he had witnessed a domestic violence incident. He didn't quite know what to do, but he was very aware of the things going on in our nation. So he took cover, called the police, make sure the young lady got help, and they asked him to stay there and wait for the police. And his statement is truly a statement on where we are in this nation. Because as he talked to the police and gave a description of himself, he had to say, "I'm a Black man, please don't shoot me." I want you to let that sink in. My son's response to this interaction is the result of our failure as a nation to truly deal with the inequities in our nation and our unwillingness to really accept what happened as we accepted slaves 400 years ago. African Americans came from nations, from a continent of cultures and families and kings and queens. They were humanity. But all of that was ignored in the slave trade. And we never really stopped to say that it was wrong. Yes, we had opportunities. We had the Dred Scott case that went to the United States Supreme Court. And that was when the United States, I'm sorry?
Go ahead, Ms. Keys-Gamarra.
Okay. We had an opportunity to turn away from those things, and we've had an opportunity so many times before, whether it was that case or lynchings or the KKK or a number of other opportunities. But in looking at what has happened to George Floyd, we now know that our shortcomings are far too great. So we must recognize the unacceptable numbers of such things as the unacceptable numbers of people who have been African Americans that have been accepted to TJ. We have to recognize that that is a manifestation of problems within our system, that we have to have greater access and opportunity to advanced academics, to affordable housing, to economic opportunity. And so we have to clean our own house. Yes, we have to get rid of Confederate names and a number of other things. And so I simply want to say, we have begun to tear down these things. We have begun to address the problems. But celebrating this day will mean nothing if we don't do anything. And so I challenge all of us, and I know that my board members will stand with us, as we remove the barriers that have created these inequities and impact our students unjustly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Keys-Gamarra. Dr. Anderson.
I'm just so very glad to second this resolution, and a lot of the things that I've written in my comments have been stated by Ms. Keys-Gamarra, even though we did not work on this together at all. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump in. Juneteenth is a holiday that was put forth to commemorate the emancipation of enslaved people in the U.S. Emancipation, the fact or process of being set free from legal, social, or political restriction, liberation. I highlight this definition because since the first Juneteenth celebration in 1865, legal, social, and political restrictions on African Americans remain a fixture in all of our institutions. Today, I join the voices to focus this year's recognition of Juneteenth not only as celebratory, but as a call to action. I seek for us as a school board and school division to reflect on what it means to liberate our students of color and staff from legal, social, and political restrictions in our schools. Restrictions that impede, limit, or restrict educational opportunities. I strongly urge the FCPS community to commit to the work of moving the needle on the issues presented to our students and families. The symbolic observation of Juneteenth does little for students and families who are consistently on the receiving end of systemic inequities, such as, but certainly not limited to, access to rigorous academic instruction, including but not limited to TJ admissions, special education overrepresentation, disciplinary disproportionality, schools named in honor of those who sought to oppress or those who sympathize their causes, and mascot names that are derogatory in nature to various groups. Daily lack of accountability to behaviors and actions that support a culture of low expectations for some of our students or disregard for basic humanity. These are a few of the immediate issues that we can address in honor of Juneteenth that I will be holding myself accountable to. And I urge our colleagues to join me in this call to action. As we shared previously in the forum, rhetoric without action might as well not take place. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. Do any of my other colleagues want to speak to this? So Dr. Anderson and Ms. Keys-Gamarra, I am so pleased that you all brought this resolution forward. It is something that I feel very passionately about, and it actually builds on the letter that this board sent to the community just a couple of weeks ago. And it is a call to action. And so I very much appreciate what you've brought here. I believe that we need to include Juneteenth and all future recognitions going forward on the school board meeting closest to the 19th of June. I also think it will be a wonderful period of time every year that we do self-reflection to say, what have we done to honor what we are signing on to today? How are we making systemic changes to positively impact our Black students, families, and staff? And so thank you so much for what you've done here. It is greatly appreciated. I now see that Ms. McLaughlin would like to say something. Ms. McLaughlin?
Yes, I just want to quickly say that not only do I appreciate the eloquent words of both of my colleagues who brought forward this resolution on recognizing Juneteenth, but I also want to express my appreciation to Dr. Braybrand and our county executive, Brian Hill, who worked collaboratively to ensure that now county and school employees will have this as a formal holiday to also honor the day and have an opportunity for reflection. And as Dr. Anderson and both Ms. Keys-Gamarra said, actions without words do not bring us to the change that we want to see in our communities. And so I am so thrilled that you've both identified where we need much change and growth in opportunities for all students in Fairfax County, and really appreciate the way that you've captured it here today on what is truly a historic and long overdue recognition of a solemn day in our nation's history, but one that brings a lot of hope.
Thank you, Ms. McLaughlin. Ms. Derenak-Kovacs?
Yes, and I too, I want to share, I want to thank my colleagues for bringing this forward. And Ms. Keys-Gamarra, I know you brought this up last year, and I understand your passion as Dr. Anderson. And I've heard from many people just today about, because we are recognizing this in Fairfax as tomorrow as a holiday and as a day of reflection. And you have a pledge from me as a fellow board member that this will be something that we will work on together. These will not just be words without action. And as we move forward, on this road, we will work together to make sure the inequities that you're speaking of and that we've seen will not continue and will be addressed. So thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Derenak-Kovacs. Ms. Omesh?
Thank you, and thank you, Karen and Ricky Riccardi, for reading the recognition. With the encouragement of Kimberly and to give voice to Kimberly, Nathan, and all the students in our schools who now have the opportunity to reflect on this, to celebrate this, and the emancipation of many people, and to think that this is a start to teaching our history, that this is why narratives are so important. And this is why when we live in a county this diverse, it is critical for us to reflect on the histories of all kinds of people, in particular those who, when our nation had declared its independence in '76 and had yet to find that for all people and for African Americans in particular in 1865. And it took that long for our country to decide that something like slavery was unjust. And that, for whether it was African Americans or even Native Americans who were enslaved, and the combinations in between, that the struggle for emancipation was something real in this country. I want us to just reflect on that, that it was actually acceptable once upon a time, and that leaders across this country propagated something like that. So now, in celebration of the opposite, to think about liberty and freedom being something that is not just physical. Now that we've moved past that, right? It's social, it's emotional, but it's mental, and having to carry the burdens of discrimination or things like that certainly speak to the need to continue pushing forth freedom. And I don't want to kind of water down, the holiday that this is. So in being positive about that and looking forward to further achievements, I'm happy to celebrate this. I'm happy to see now that it is going to be a holiday across the board for all of us. and hope that we can be proactive to beat the state next time to doing this. And certainly connect, having known that a third of the slaves that came here shared my faith, and there's so much intersectionality with that. So in any case, happy Juneteenth to all those, and which is tomorrow, June 19th. So, and here's to many more celebrations of freedom in the future.
Thank you, Ms. Omesh. I will say that this was put on the calendar a couple of weeks ago, so I think technically we did beat the state, but we're glad to join the state in this celebration. Ms. Sizemore-Heiser.
Great, thank you very much. And I also want to echo a great appreciation and thanks to my colleagues, Ms. Keys-Gamarra and Dr. Anderson, for bringing forth this recognition and for the very heartfelt and wise and much needed words of, and so I don't want to sort of center my own words too much in this. I wanted to speak up to say that when I participated in the swearing in back in December, the book I carried with me was A People's History of the United States. And it was my copy that I got in college. And it's because this mission of centering voices that haven't been heard and making sure that our history reflects all of the people and all of our rich histories is so important to me that that's what the message I wanted to swear myself in on. So I'm just here to say that I'm pledging to also not have words without actions and to be an ally moving forward to make sure that everybody in our schools are equally respected, included, valued, and everybody's histories and cultures are studied and understood and valued from varied perspectives and from a lens of the deep and rich history of which we all have. So thank you, and I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to standing alongside you all as we move this work forward.
Thank you, Ms. Sizemore-Heiser. Ms. Cohen.
I really appreciate my colleagues bringing up this resolution as well. And in the spirit of making sure that these are not words, that they're actions, I really challenge all of us to look at what are the systemic issues in FCPS that leave many of our Black African-American students to feel othered, to feel like they are not supported, and sometimes that they're actively in a system that feels like it's working against them. So as Ms. Keys-Gamarra said, in the forum topic today regarding the name change for Mosby Woods, we have low-hanging fruit, but we also have work that needs to happen systemically. We need to work on our hiring practices. We need to work on our professional development. We need to work on our SR&R. We need to work on AAP and TJ. We need school-specific interventions around anti-racism. We need anti-racist curriculum. We need to have conversations about the roles of SROs in our schools. And we need to tackle truancy and make sure that we are not inadvertently participating in the school to prison pipeline. Those are just the very beginning of conversations that we need to have as a board and as a community. And I hope that if there's any good to come from all of the bad that we have seen and all that has been exposed in the last few weeks, I hope it will be real action more than just a resolution of a recognition of an incredibly important day. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cohen. Ms. Marion?
I'm very pleased to support this resolution and pleased that the superintendent has granted it as a day of observance for our staff. Ms. Cohen outlined the task before us, and I'd like to challenge our board here to see if we can save time before the end of this meeting at 5:30 to go back and hear the forum topic that she presented to address that very list of things that she put forth. I would, we're supposed to go 5:30. If we can reserve some time, we can set forth the work for staff to start doing this. So I will certainly aspire to keep any other comments short and reserve time. I'm happy to make a motion to that effect if that's what is most proper.
So, Ms. Marin, I appreciate your advocacy. There's not a motion for that. We're going to talk about this motion first, and then we can continue on, okay? I appreciate it. We'll try to keep this tight. Thank you. Ms. Tolan?
Yes, hi. Thank you very much for bringing this resolution forward. I thank my colleagues for that. Some of my earliest memories in life are volunteering at the St. Boniface Parish in Milwaukee and peacefully marching with Father James Groppe to promote civil rights for African Americans. My mother was a quiet activist and in her strong, persistent way, instilled in me the knowledge that all people are created equal, no matter race, religious affiliation, country of origin, sexual orientation, profession, disability, etc. No person's abilities are to be underestimated, and equitable treatment of all individuals is unquestionable. And all people need to be treated with compassion and respect. I wanted to mention, I had fortunate to be on the phone earlier today with one of our administrators, and I want to commend them for moving some of this work forward already by moving forward with discussions with our parent communities, our student communities, and our staff. And as this administrator eloquently put it earlier today, there is no period at the end of this sentence. We have lots of work ahead of us, and it's something that needs to continue as we move forward for years and years. And I look forward to working with my colleagues and our administrators and staff across FCPS to continue this work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Tolan. Mr. Frisch.
Thank you. Yeah, very quickly, I appreciate the comments of Karen Gies-Gamara and Ricardi Anderson in their eloquent discussion of Juneteenth. And I would underscore Melanie's call that we keep ourselves as quick and brief as possible today. And it would be fantastic if we could return to the forum topic that was next on our agenda, which would move the school division forward on a number of these issues formally so that staff can get to work. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frisch. Ms. Pekarsky.
Thank you. Just briefly, I also want to thank Ms. Gies-Gamara and Dr. Anderson, who so eloquently talked about this topic. And I too just want to say, I am ready for action and I'm ready to do the hard work. And I think we as a board are there, and I think the community is ready to have these difficult discussions. I see them happening in my schools. And the only way to really move us forward is to have the hard conversations and do the real work where it matters. So I am also committed to this, and I thank you both for bringing this to us today.
Thank you, Ms. Pekarsky. Ms. Boateng, did you want to speak to this?
Well, not quite right now. I think I'll speak more to it during, more to everything during student matters. But thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. So with that, I will call for the vote. All those in favor of the recognition put forth by Ms. Gies-Gamara and seconded by Dr. Anderson, please show your hands and I will call you out. Ms. Marin, Ms. Pekarsky, Ms. Derenak-Kofax, Ms. Cohen, Ms. Gies-Gamara, Ms. Omeish, Dr. Anderson, Ms. McLaughlin, Ms. Tolan, Ms. Sizemore-Heiser, Mr. Frisch, and Ms. Corbett-Sanders. That motion is unanimous. It does carry. Now we will go on to the portion of our